Welcome to A Better Way podcast. I'm your host, McKay Scholl, here with Canopy Mortgage. Today, joining the show, we have Seth Bellas. And Seth, I am so stoked to be able to have you join us. You are relatively new to Canopy Mortgage. We'll talk about that more later. But before we dig into that, I'm more interested. Tell me a little bit about Seth. What does Seth do outside of slinging loans?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I have two kids, a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old. I have a wife that we've been married for 11 years. My wife works in palliative care, which is essentially pain management. And she's a nurse and she runs the palliative care division for a local company in the Grand Rapids area. I love to play soccer. I played soccer all the way through college, and I've really played every year of my life since I was 5. I still play, although turning 36 a few days ago, who knows? I feel like the window might be shortening on my soccer career, but that's something I love to do. I love to read. I'm very curious. I like learning about the way that things work. And so I spend a lot of time just, especially with people. I feel like people and their stories and relationships are a huge part of my life, my friends and the people that I work with day to day, and in my family. I love being in relationship with other people because I think humans are the most fascinating creation that God has made. And so I think a lot of what I love to do is kind of around spending time with people that I love. People tell me I have way too many hobbies because I'll pretty much try anything. I talked to you about, I'm training for a hike right now just because I want to experience, climbing and hiking a mountain. Someday I'll get up to a fort and we're going to try to do something a little smaller initially, but it's just like a fun thing to challenge myself with. Let's see what else about me. I've been in the mortgage business for a little over a decade.
Awesome.
And I have a pretty consistent gym schedule. I care a lot about nutrition. Part of that's because when I was 13 years old, I got diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. So I've been living with that for 22 years. Played collegiate soccer. I've run half marathons. It hasn't ever slowed me down, but I think in some ways I'm actually grateful for it because early on as a kid, I was ashamed and I felt like I kind of had to hide it from other people because I didn't want to be different. But it's always made me have to be so attentive to what I'm putting into my body and why, that I feel like I'm a healthier person in some ways because of it, which is such a weird thing to say out loud. But instead of defining me in a negative way, I feel like in some ways diabetes has defined me in a positive way. And I'm very ironically kind of grateful to have been on that journey. So happy to answer any other questions that you have, but that's maybe.
No, love that. And thanks. I do have a couple of follow-up questions, but have you seen Pollyanna? I know that is the most random question, but
I feel like I've seen it at some point, but not certainly not recently.
Okay, so my wife told me, she's like, you need to watch Pollyanna. And last night I watched Pollyanna, and I won't share how emotional I got, but something you said, and it was just on top of mine. Like, you took something like your type 1 diabetes and you turned it on your head. She talks about playing the GLAD game. And basically anytime adversity hits, she finds a way to turn and think of things that you're glad for. So I love that. I love that you're just a positive human. I've had the opportunity to share a meal with you when you flew out to Utah. Just that positive energy is contagious, and I love that about you. But you said one other thing. You said you love to read books. I love to listen to books. For whatever reason, I can't sit down and open a book, but I love to have Audible going on in the background. So I'm curious, what's a most recent read? This is a question I love to ask people that are into reading that you feel like changed your life or taught you a principle.
Yeah, and I guess a lot of my reading recently has been more around just kind of pleasure reading, things that I read for fun. Actually, I geeked out about this a little bit with Aaron because I think it was Aaron that I was talking to about reading Brandon Sanderson a lot. I don't know if or maybe I was talking to you. I don't remember.
No, it's Aaron, because I don't know it, but I've heard him talk about it multiple times.
What's interesting, and you can laugh, at me for taking significant things from the book, but there are a lot of quotes, the way that Brandon Sanderson writes. He's actually a Utah native, and I think he teaches at Brigham Young, at least on some level. And so he just has some really great wisdom in the way that he writes. And I just love the worlds that he builds. It's really easy to get caught up in them. I also listen to audiobooks. I find myself, I read for many years, like just read, physical books, but I feel like I retain a lot more information if I'm listening to audiobooks. So I'm trying to think if there's anything recently that I read that has been like really changed the way that I think. I've listened to a lot of podcasts. One that I've listened to a lot recently is Modern Wisdom. I don't know if you listen to Chris Williamson. He
No, I'll
does.
have to check it out. And that's essentially what I was after. I'm like, I love listening to what gets people going, and tell me a little bit
Yeah,
about that.
Chris is just a really good interviewer, and he brings on some awesome subject matter experts, and I think that one of the things that I'm very fascinated by, or that I'm learning a lot about right now, is like just just how to live a healthy and balanced life. What does it look like to do that? So I'm learning a lot of things about like cold plunges or cold showers, heat therapy, and the benefits of doing things like I recently learned that skipping is one of the best workouts that you can do to build cardiovascular endurance and VO2 max. And I actually talked to, it's funny, right before I came here, I was at a real estate office and one of my partners is there. And one of the conversations he and I were having was about like starting a weekly routine where we get together once a week to train our cardio systems and do skipping around a local track. So I haven't done it yet, so I can't speak to the benefits, but apparently there are some neuro benefits as well as just the cardiovascular components of that.
If you'll do me a favor and have your social media expert video you doing your skipping workout, I would love to take a peek at that, Seth.
I think it will probably end up on social media at some point. I wouldn't be surprised by that at all. She's ruthless at looking for ways for me to do goofy things to make people laugh. And so I just kind of nod my head and I say, okay, like, let's just do it. I'm along for the ride.
Super cool. So tell me, switching gears a little bit, tell me a little bit about your team. Before you and I started this podcast, you were just saying you've really built this awesome team, and help us kind of understand and see your structure, maybe where you started in the industry to this team today. Just so I love hearing the makeup of teams. I see a bunch of different within our organization, within the industry as a whole. So would love to hear how your team came to be.
Yeah. So I've had the same processor since I started for 11 years now. So I've had the same processor that's been with me the whole time. She's amazing. She is so committed to, I can talk about the structure, but I think the thing that I love the most about the way our team is set up right now is that everybody owns their things that they do. Like, I don't feel like a boss. I don't. I might have hiring and firing privileges or rights, but it feels like we are all working together as a group for the same goal, and like we're peers. And I think when you hire people in a field like this one that takes so much creative thinking and also commitment to getting all the little things right, having people who take ownership in those positions is probably the most important thing. You'll hear that from LOs all the time. No one's going to care as much as I do. I don't think that's true of anybody on my team. I think, and it's bigger than just, getting a paycheck or hitting our goals as a group. It's also about the commitment to the people that we work with. I think they understand that our business specifically, is built on relationship. And there's a phrase that trust is built in drops, but it's lost in buckets. And so they know that all the little deposits that they make on a regular basis, those are the bedrock of any great organization. And it doesn't matter if you're 5 people or if you're 500 people, it's the same idea. It's very hard to build trust, and it's very easy to lose it. And I think everyone on our team operates with that. Quick highlights of my journey. Started about 10 years ago, almost 11 years in June, it'll be 11. I was just an LO, came off the streets with no prior experience. I'm an English major, no business or finance background, no sales background. And so I started and I built my own, origination business in 2014. And then in 2015 or 2016, got to the point where I needed support. And so I brought on, an admin. And really, there's a few different iterations of that over the past few years. About 6 years ago, I started my own branch, and I've had my own branch since then. We've had as many as 10 people on the team, and now we're at 5. Obviously, anyone who's been through the market conditions of 2020 and 21 would understand why that would be the case. But I feel like, as we've gone through these different iterations, we've been able to really fine tune and figure out what people do we need and what seats on the bus. So I have a partner, Josh, and Josh is really the operational backbone of our team. If there's something that needs to be built, if there's a process that needs to be tweaked, Josh is always adding new things into what we do and how we do it to create automation, to create speed. And so Josh is really and he does everything. He does initial calls. He brings in his own clients. And Josh is the executor. He's the one that gets up and gets it done, essentially. We have a LOA, Matt, who started with us in August. So he's the newest member to our team. Matt has previous experience in title and real estate. And so he just has a breadth of knowledge about how the whole process works. And so he does a lot of support for us in running estimates for clients, running pre-approvals. We have a processor, like I mentioned, and then I have a part-time admin, like personal assistant / marketing. And she also helps manage the office as well. So she kind of wears a lot of different hats depending on what day it is. But I would say, I can't imagine doing business without any of those people the way that we have it set up right now. And I feel like for the most part, my job is really essentially three things: have the initial phone call with the client, have the meeting with the client. We do a buyer meeting with every client that we work with, and then have an offer accepted call with the client. And then apart from that, it's about building relationships with realtors and financial planners and attorneys. But that's essentially my job. Anything outside of that, I do my best to just totally let go of and give to the team, because if I'm in those sweet spots, that's when our team is doing really well.
Yeah, I think something you said, and I would certainly put our CEO as a phenomenal example of this, is really allowing your people to execute and do things the way they see fit. And just based on what you described, very much so. I think culture isn't something that is written on a wall. I think that's really hard. But if you live it, I love the trust. It's crazy how intertwined something you said, what was it, built in drops and can be lost in buckets. And a quote of Aaron's, our CEO, all the time, he says, trust can take a lifetime to earn and seconds to lose. And so I just think it's interesting how oftentimes just meeting with individuals, and I have a really awesome opportunity in the role that I have in the company, I get to see what their cultures are like. And I find it's just amazing to me, call it divine inspiration. I don't know how often those cultures just absolutely intertwine perfectly. So I love your take on leadership is a very, hey, go and ultimately build this thing better than I can. And you're there for the accountability piece and to help give them resources. Aaron often says leadership is more, or ownership is more a stewardship. And we think of each of our branch managers or leaders as owners of their own brand and their own ultimate branch. And so anyway, love your thoughts and take on leadership. So one question I would have: what sets your group? Like, why would I come to Seth for a loan? Like, what would you say sets you apart from the competition out there?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that probably our biggest thing that, the reason why we built our brand, our whole brand around this, is we think that the mortgage process is overly complicated and can be overly complicated by the lender, actually. And so our job is to bring clarity to not just the initial conversation, but really every stage. It's like, there are so many little details, this, obviously, there's so many little details in the process, but it also doesn't end when we close the loan. It's like when we close the loan, there is a continued relationship that exists. So there's future conversations about refinance potential. There's introduction to other professionals. The relationship that we're trying to build with the individuals we work with is really centered around wealth, like long-term wealth building. People don't think about a mortgage as a wealth building tool, but if it's used appropriately, it can be. And I don't necessarily think there's one specific strategy that is a solution, but it's about having a strategy that you're executing on purpose. So when someone works with us and we get to the closing table, everything is dialed. Like we're within $250 of our original estimates. Everything is dialed. We have a game plan around how we're preparing for future property tax adjustments. We know what we're targeting for a future refinance. And this is all stuff that happens, in that initial conversation. And then we continue to manage that for our clients in the future. So I think that it's because of how comprehensive we are and the clarity that we create at every stage, not just of the loan process, but really at every stage of the client's life in their connection with us. And so I think that's probably the thing that is a little bit more unique about us from other people. And please don't get me wrong. I know other people do a great job providing clarity. I know we're not the only people that do that, but that is kind of the cornerstone of what we do. And I would say, if I had to guess, we're better than 95% of the industry at doing that because of how much intention we put into what our process looks like and how we go about executing it.
Love that. Sounds like the relationship really begins at the closing table, as opposed to what a lot of the competition is. Hey, let's hurry and as soon as that close is done, that's where the relationship ends and they move on to their next victim per se. So I love that thought.
I think I just comment back to what you were saying earlier. You're talking about the way Aaron operates and some of the things that he says and how there's some similarities there. Like attracts like. And I feel like when Canopy was formed and when Jeff and Aaron and you decided what is the direction we want to take with this organization, you, without even necessarily knowing it at the time, like you were building a system to attract people like me and people who think like you and Aaron and Jeff. And so it shouldn't surprise you too much that the conversations you're having with producers and that as you're getting to know, some of the people that are joining Canopy, that you're seeing a lot of consistency because, they say more is caught than taught. And so, when you're talking about parenting, and I think it's similar in this job too, like the way the company is designed, it is designed to bring in entrepreneurs who are committed to leading a really great group of people and that want the freedom and value that ability to just put energy and effort into building their own brand and their own culture. But it is interesting that you're starting to see some of those similar things show up in these conversations that you have.
Totally. No, thanks. Hey, okay. And I want to be respectful of your time. I know you're super busy and there are many clients out there that need to hear from Seth. But my question for you is, if you look, call it a year into the future and then 5 years into the future, where are you wanting to take your business? What are your goals?
Yeah, great question. Our goal right now, so this year in 2025, our run rate is not putting us there, but we're committed to changing that very quickly. But our goal is to do 50 million in production as a group this year. I think 5 years from now, really my overarching goal, my biggest goal is between Josh and I from a partnership perspective to generate $1 million in commissions and profitability over the next in 5 years. That is our goal. I think it's actually possible we could do that sooner. And I think I texted you about this the other day. When I did the math at my previous employer, to make $1 million, we needed to have $88 million in personal production. In the model that we have with Canopy, it's feasible and possible, easily for us to make $1 million closing $55 million in production. So our what was a 5-year target for us might be more like a 2 or 3 year target. So Josh and I actually have to go back and rework our planning because we might hit that number a lot sooner than we were planning on, which is a great problem to have. I mean, it's an awesome thing, but I'd never done the math on that until we were kind of looking at this again recently. It's like, hey, I wonder what would it take at Canopy to hit that $1 million number? And I think it's very achievable for us to make that happen.
I love that you highlighted that, Seth, because at the end of the day, our goal is to be able to do more with less. And how we do that is through a number of different ways. But ideally, it's through creating efficiencies and ultimately being able to drive the cost to produce a loan down. And so I love that the numbers on your side prove that out, because ultimately that's what we want to do. We want to be able to empower people to do more with less.
Yeah, it is a blessing. And I think I think that it's really easy. It's so easy to be, loyalty isn't bad. Loyalty, I think, is a great thing. But unfortunately, like loyalty, if you're not willing to entertain the possibility that maybe, I think that for the past few years, I've just been watching, like I've just been watching what's going on. I talk to people, from different companies a couple times a year just to kind of see like, okay, is there something unique enough out there for me to go through the pain of making a change? And I knew that, there was great things about my previous employer that I appreciated, but I was always just like, I feel like there's got to be a better way. And I want to be open to the fact that that could be true. And I can honestly say after, being at Canopy for less than 2 months, I can't imagine going back to the platform that I was in previously. I just can't. And I was thinking about this. I was like, I feel I feel like there's so many people that I know personally in the industry who would just super benefit from being inside of this model. But then I also know it's not for everybody. Like it isn't. And I think that behind the more that you see behind the scenes, like the more branch managers you talk to and the more that you get, like I was on a board at my previous company, the more you understand the financials of how it works behind the scenes, the more you're like, wait a minute, this company or this branch, like the majority of our branches run in the red every month. And you're like, wait a minute, this is a big company. Like who's subsidizing that? Where does it, but how are we making money? And it's like, oh, well, we're making money somehow. Well, and then you start to think, you start to ask yourself, you're like, well, it's got to be coming from the branches that are in the black. It's just, people think mortgage math is complicated. And I'm like, look, guys, it's addition and subtraction, multiplication, percentages. It's not, this is fourth grade level or fifth grade level math. This isn't complicated. And so, I think that the more that you peel away the onions of the traditional retail model, the more you're like, I don't even understand how this is working, or this doesn't seem like a great system. And I think that's what really stood out to me, when I started interacting with Tim Davis was, okay, this is different. And then the more that we dug into it, actually, the more different it was. It's like initially I just liked, I liked Canopy because of the traditional, like, or the non-traditional, like, hey, this is our cost, this is what you make, we're not going to hide anything, total transparency. That was the initial thing that drew me. But then I was like, oh, and I also get Nano on top of that.
Yeah, I love that.
Nano was like the bonus. Nano was like oh, okay, that's kind of cool too. And then also it was like the freedom to build our own brand and to be able to put energy into that. So proud. We just got signage, we just got pens and postcards and all these different like cool things. And it feels really empowering to like have my own thing and to be able to put all of my energy into building my team and my client base, with my brand, and, using Canopy as a place, a home base, for all of that to happen. So it's been a crazy couple of months, but I am super grateful for it. And going back, I would not do anything differently, except probably join sooner, to be honest.
Love it. And thank you so much for the kind words. We are so thankful to have you and your team as part of the Canopy Mortgage family, and excited to grow right there alongside with you. So thanks a million for coming on the show. And when you want to come hike about a 12,000 footer, come hang out with us in Utah. You can do that as your training ground.
That'll be
just outside my window here, and we would love to have you anytime, my friend.
I appreciate it. I will definitely be taking you up on that offer, and thank you for having me on, and I'm grateful for it. So thank you very much.
Perfect. He's Seth, and we're thankful to have him as part of the Canopy Mortgage team.